So, hi, Julie.
Hi, David. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you.
So good to see you.
So good to see you again.
So, tell me all about your awakening.
Oh, my awakening. Well, we walk through hell to get to heaven, right? So my life was a struggle. They used to call it that I walked around with a black cloud. So if it could go wrong, it would go wrong to me. And I actually started taking in that belief that everything always went wrong. So I experienced a lot of things in my life, from car accidents to rape to abusive relationships to just trauma after trauma after trauma, sexual harassments, uh, and 7 miscarriages. By the time that I ended up having my come to Jesus moment, my surrender, where that was it, I couldn't do it anymore. I was experiencing my 7th miscarriage. My mom was in the hospital with cancer again, and I pretty much started miscarrying at the same time she went in, so it was really not something we're talking about. And at the time, I remember sitting outside in the hallway, and I was on the phone with a gentleman, and we were in the midst of a private adoption. And he told me that the private adoption had fallen through, and that maybe I should just concentrate on getting over my miscarriage before I thought about having a kid. And I remember everything at the time. My job was going crappy. My health was deteriorating exponentially. I'd had headaches every day. I'd had a car accident that had left me with severe neck trauma on top of an abusive relationship, which left me with further neck trauma. And I remember just thinking that I didn't know what tomorrow brought, and I didn't know what it would look like, but I was sure it was surely going to be better than what it was today. And if that meant that I had to change everything it is that I was doing in my life, and I had to change all the people that I had in my life, then that was exactly what it is that I was going to do. And so the first thing I did was quit my job, which was hilarious because I had no money. I mean, we were getting debt collectors calling 17 times a day. Our house was possibly going to be foreclosed on because we were about $8,000 in back taxes owing on the house. Our power was going to get cut off. I had just bill collectors calling me nonstop. And in the midst of all that, I turned to my husband and I said, I can't do this anymore. And I can't go back to work. It's not working. Nothing is working. And I have to change. And everything has to change. And he looked at me and he said, okay, whatever it looks like tomorrow is fine. But he didn't want to see me go through that anymore. So we, in the midst of everything looking at its worst at that point in time in life, I decided to stop and fully change directions. And so that's how I sort of started. That was because I sat back every day, and I don't know how many people out there sit back and think, like, is this what life is? I get up in the morning and I pray to God for the end of the day. I don't want to be at work. Is it 5 o'clock yet? I get up in the week and I just pray for the weekend. So I'm living for possibly nights and weekends. Like, that was the existence of my day. And every day I woke up in pain, in trauma, anger, so much anger. From my abusive relationship, I had so much anger, which meant that I gave away a lot of my power. Anger is like swallowing poison and hoping your enemy will die, right? So to me, it was like I was giving him this power, and yet he was off doing whatever with whoever, and probably not even thinking about me, or sending me lots of daggers, probably is what was happening. And here I am giving him all this power in my life. Every day I was thinking about him. I was so angry. And I had to come to the realization that I was never going to get from him what I wanted, which was an apology and an acknowledgement that I was right. Because, the good old ego loves the right fighting. And so I remember thinking to myself, like, I have to stop this insanity. I have to figure out a way to stop thinking about him all the time, to stop being so angry all the time, to let go of the things that had happened to me in my past, because everything that was happening to me had culminated in my body. So as a kinesiologist, as my background in kinesiology, through doing a lot of rehab with people, at the time I was also watching the people that I was dealing with that dealt with the emotional state that they were in. Their emotional traumas, if they had dealt with them and they started working through them, then their health got better. But you take, for example, the mother, the stay-at-home mom that didn't get a lot of attention and didn't give it a lot of gratitude or thank yous, and all of a sudden they have a knee problem. So now they can't do as much anymore, and their family has to help them, and now they have a lot of sympathy. And those people, they liked that. And so they didn't get better. Because in essence, they were getting what it is that they wanted. And so I started realizing that our emotional state became physical manifestations within our body.
Wow.
So we began storing, so all the trauma became the store. So for example, my neck, when I realized that I was holding on this anger, when I realized that all of this was stuck in my body and I was ready to let it release, I went to see a woman named Tracy who does body regeneration. And she literally within one foul swoop put her hand on my forehead and one on my C1 and did her thing, and my neck fully released. I had no pain. The doctor said I would have to get a surgery to fuse the neck. They would go in through the neck and they would fuse it in order for me to really alleviate the pain that I was having. And I had constant deferred pain down my arms and into my fingers, and I couldn't move my neck up or down. I couldn't move it to the side. I was taking pain pills every couple of hours, like 4 at a time. I'd be popping them just because I couldn't move. I couldn't function in my day without them. And so as soon as she had released my neck, because I was ready to release the anger and the frustration, I was willing to look at a different way. I was willing to look at a different opinion, a different viewpoint, because that's a huge thing with necks, right? Necks are very rigid when you're very rigid in how you think and your viewpoints, when you want to be right all the time. And I was ready to release that. And all of a sudden, in one foul swoop, it was gone. Something the doctor said that they would have to do a surgery on, and that my neck would be fused, and for the remainder of my life, I'd be looking around like this. And once she took away the pain, or once I allowed the pain to release, then I didn't take any medication anymore. It was like, it wasn't even an addiction. It was literally something that allowed me to function in my day. And once it went, that was it. I didn't take another pill. It wasn't even like it was an addiction. It was the strangest thing, because it had codeine in it, and you'd think that it was something that I would have stayed on, or I would have had a withdrawal from, but I didn't even have a withdrawal. It was just that I no longer needed them at all. But the one big thing that I learned was that I asked for all of it. Now that's a huge concept for people to embrace. Yeah, right? So that's somebody who's been abused. Now, I mean, mind you, there are circumstances where obviously you've been kidnapped, there's some circumstances, but pretty much for everybody who's normally in a situation like mine, where it's mental, physical, and emotional abuse, I chose to stay.
So how did you come to that realization that you had chosen all of this, that you had almost created it or co-created it?
I had in essence created it. And it came to that actually it was Tracy L. Clark. And she had said to me, it was your choice. And so, of course, my ego, because we have the two separate sides of us, right? The white wolf and the dark wolf, and which one do we feed? The angel, the devil, and we have our soul and we have our ego. And at first you take a step back and you go, whoa, I never asked for this. I never chose this. But if I'm honest with myself, I stayed. So I had to own the fact that I had made the choice to stay in the relationship. And then from there, I had to think, okay, well, what was it supposed to teach me? What was I supposed to learn from that circumstance? And really what it had boiled down to was that I didn't love myself. That if I had loved myself enough, then I never would have allowed anybody to treat me like that. So then it was a path of, okay, so I obviously have shame, guilt, I have a lot of things that are sitting inside of me in which I allowed myself to get to a point where I allowed somebody to abuse me. Again, like I had said before, lessons in life are continually presented until ultimately learned. And the severity increases along the way. And he was my severe case. He was my greatest teacher.
So the ante-ups, with each time you don't take the lesson in, you don't integrate it and learn it, the ante-ups and gets more and more extreme.
Exactly. Until the point where, for some people, they end up having a heart attack. For some people, all of a sudden, they have severe diabetes. For other people, like myself, I ended up in an abusive relationship. And so you look at it and you think to yourself, okay, well, the freeing thing about that is that if I chose it, that means I can choose something different. So if I chose it, it means that the power is within me, not external. And one of our biggest difficulties is that we always put things to other people. Like, if he had changed and apologized, my life would just be better. If my coworker at work was just a better person to me, then my job would be better. Then I'd have this. If I had more money, my life would be better. And so we consistently put it all outside of ourselves, instead of really understanding that we create what it is that we put out there in the world. So we really are like these beacons, and we send out this information, and all of a sudden the universe just says, okay, I'll give it to you. It doesn't assign a good or a bad to it, but if you're asking for it, you get it. And so I ended up having somebody that taught me that I needed to love myself, because I allowed myself to be in that relationship for that long. And I allowed the abuse. And then I realized really at the very end of it, I could fully see that it was my ego that required being right. Because even near the end of it, all I wanted him to do was tell me that I was right. And I would have said to him, yeah, and I would have left. I wouldn't have stayed. I could never have stayed in the relationship. So I really realized that my ego was keeping me stuck. My need to right fight, my need to be right all the time was keeping me very stuck in a situation that was really not healthy for me. And then turning around and realizing that he was my greatest teacher. Because without him, I wouldn't be where I am today. Without him, I wouldn't be helping people today. Without him, I would never have gotten to the point where I truly realized that I loved myself and that I was amazing, as is every single person. And I wouldn't have grown in the path that I've grown in. I never would have met my husband. I never would have healed the way I'm healing. I would be in a very traumatic situation at this point. Either that or I would be dead by now. One of the two would have happened. So, go ahead, sorry.
Was there a particular sort of, the clouds parted and that moment in your life when you had this realization, when Tracy put it to you, or was there something that shifted beyond the cognitive level in terms of a life event to mirror, obviously your neck freed up on that first session, and then you had this revelation about choice and choosing this life that you'd had? Was there anything that then started to shift and change in your life, or what happened within? You left your job.
Everything changed. Everything changed in my life. When I actually owned my shit, excuse my language, but when I owned it, then I realized I had the ability to change it. And that's when everything changed in my life. When I realized that the way that I spoke to people reflected back to me in their actions, the way that I spoke to the universe, the way I interacted with it. We have between 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day on average. And that's your mind, not your brain, but your monkey mind running. And for the most part, they're not positive. And for the most part, they're the same. 80% of them, or at least 85% of them, are probably the same thoughts you had the day before. And they're normally, I'm not good enough, my job sucks, I don't have enough money, I need to lose weight, I need to blah, blah, blah. And we consistently tell ourselves these things over and over and over again to the point where we program them in our bodies. And we take them on as though they're truths. So when I realized that I had the ability to change that by taking ownership and changing the way it is that I communicated with the universe, with my husband, with my family, with my friends, the way that I communicated and calling in new things into my life, how asking for new jobs, new money, any of that stuff, when I was able to understand that it really was within my control and I was the one that was radiating what it is that I wanted. The universe was just reflecting back to me what it is that I was putting out there.
Right. So you are the program, in essence.
I am. I am fully.
Response. It's like call and response.
Exactly. So then I had to start learning, okay, I was in such a financial situation. So then I had to start changing how it is that I dealt with it. So when I got a bill in, instead of going, oh my God, I don't have the money for this, I'd write thank you on the outside of the bill and I love you on the outside of the bill. And then when I'd open the bill, I'd thank the hand of God for bringing in a creative financial miracle to pay for this bill and even better, even better, even better. And then what I do is I put that aside and I'd stop being narcissistic and I'd go help somebody else. So one of our biggest issues is, and I'm going to say this and it's going to trigger people, any money, I'm going to have a lashback from this comment, but depression at the end of the day is very narcissistic. And I can say that because that was me.
In what way? Is it?
Well, in the way that we spend our time literally concentrating on everything that we don't have, everything that's not happened for us in our life, everything that somebody else is doing to us. So we get very stuck in victim mode. So we're victims or we're martyrs and, oh, my life has been awful because this person did this to me and my boss is like this to me and I don't have this. And we become very, very stuck in our own crap. And all we do is we sit there and we think about it. I remember there were days where, there would be a TV show on in front of me and for 4 hours I'd be sitting there and I couldn't even tell you what I just watched because the whole time I was just thinking, running over a conversation in my mind that I wanted to have or a response to somebody or why is this happening to me and why is life so crap and why am I in this situation? And we just sink into this spiral of narcissistic me, and I'm not getting, and I'm not getting. And I found that when I stopped concentrating on what it is that I could get, and I instead concentrated on what it is that I could give away and what it is I could give to somebody else, then everything in my life changed. So even when we were in a financial situation and I say maybe had, and they were it's a reality. I mean, it was a choice between, you know, I had $10 in my pocket, literally $10. I'd have $10 in my pocket and I'd go get a coffee and I'd buy a coffee for the person behind me. Now our regular programming says, well, you don't have any money. So what are you doing giving away, you know, $1.50 or whatever it is to somebody else? But at the same point in time, it was when you give, you receive. And so I had to start changing the way it is that I saw my money. I had to start changing the way it is that I saw, you know, giving and receiving in life, because the other problem was that I had difficulty receiving. So I had to really open up to receiving. I would give you the last penny that I had, but I had a real difficult time receiving.
So that tendency to flip around, that inward neediness, sort of depressed narcissism.
Yeah.
For those people that have been genuinely, you know, like you were, like oppressed in a relationship, they, you know, they've got perhaps a shit job or a really serious health complaint.
Yeah.
There's an element of victimhood.
Absolutely.
That is potentially also healthy, where they need time to wallow in the realization that they have been a victim, you know, that initial, the true victim, like the person who is a true victim of an assault, and perhaps, but that's different to the victim that wallows and goes round and round and round and round long after the time when they've been a genuine victim.
Absolutely. I mean, I was robbed at gunpoint too when I worked in the bank. You know, I was robbed at gunpoint, and I remember, you know, I got so sick of my own story. You know, they're genuine. You know, really, you get sick after a period of time. It's like a broken record. You keep playing the same crap over and over and over again in your life, and you get to a point where, you know, even the people around you are like, okay, so this is it for the rest of your life. You're going to be stuck in this one spot, and you're the victim, and you know, life will never get
better. The rescuer, don't they? They either need a rescuer, and then the rescuer eventually becomes the perpetrator, and then you've got the triangle. Or, like you say, you snap out of the triangle and flip it. You become the co-creator.
Yeah. And then that in turn has a lot of people that you end up not having a relationship with them either, because they much preferred it when you were in the victim mode.
Yes, they like to be, there's almost a payoff to being the rescuer.
That's right. And when you get your strength and when you start coming out of it, all of a sudden they don't really know how to deal with you anymore. And so then, you know, when you go through a transition like this, you're going to probably change your job. You're probably going to lose some friends. You might have to distance yourself from family. And so there is a point of becoming selfish in this path. Because at the very beginning, we do things out of expectation all the time. You know, somebody expects us to go to a party because they've invited us. You don't want to go. You get that feeling inside, that contracted. We've talked before, David, about the expansion and contraction, right? The cop pulls in behind you and in traffic, and you're like, oh crap, like, oh, I don't want to get pulled over. I don't want to get a ticket. I don't want, you know, anything to happen to me. And you get that contraction. You know, conversely, you think about something that really makes your heart, you know, soar. Like, you know, I think about my husband, and my heart just expands, right? It just expands in your chest. I think about my dogs, it just expands. So you get to a point in your life where, you know, we go along with all these expectations constantly, but at the same time, we're not listening to our body, because our body's screaming at us saying, oh, no, you don't want to go. And we're too afraid to say no to people. We're too afraid to set our boundaries, because what if they don't like us? What if we don't get invited again? What if they get angry at me because I'm not coming? I mean, now I'm like the queen of no.
Was there situations where that evolved, where you got into that habit of putting what I would call your relationship to your source first, above and beyond anything external? Above and beyond was how did that sort of evolve in your awakening journey?
Well, at first, it actually sort of started me prior to my huge awakening moment. And that was when I had received a text message from my abusive ex. And I looked at it, and in it, I don't know, I think he told me to die and blah, blah, blah. I can't remember what it was now. But I remember looking at it, and I remember shutting the phone, and I chucked the phone to the side, and I'm like, I'm done. Like, in that, it was just the camel, you know, the straw that broke the camel's back. And I remember thinking, you know, in that instant, I had an extraordinary life. Because I was no longer caring about what he was doing, where he was going. I never had to talk to him again. I never answered the phone again. And all of a sudden, there's a massive relief had come over me. And then I left my job at the time. I left my apartment. I left everything. I changed my life entirely then. And it was at that moment, because I had been treated so poorly, that I never allowed anybody to treat me like that again. So that is one thing that I definitely had changed right away. You know, I didn't care if I was alone the rest of my life. I would never allow anybody to ever treat me like that again.
And I think that,
So,
yeah, sorry.
go ahead, sorry.
That's like the pivotal moment, you know, when I trained as a Gestalt psychotherapist, they call that, like, Arnold Bezer wrote a whole book on, that is the moment when you've swallowed so much shit that you
Yes,
no longer delude yourself that you are doing change.
exactly.
Actually, the shit comes up to about here, it's so full, and then it's up to about your eyeballs, and you think, if it goes any higher, I'm going to disappear. And then you then make the decision.
Yeah.
Sounds to me that was when you went, okay, enough is enough. I'm making a decision.
Afterwards, I mean, I never thought I'd be married. Like, I never thought I would get into a relationship again. I never, you know, I really didn't think that I'd ever trust anybody enough again. And I remember when I met my husband, I think it was on our first date, I set down my rules of engagement. Like, you know, because he's military, right? So it's so funny, you know, here's my rules of engagement. And I just basically said, this is what I'll tolerate. This is what I won't tolerate. This is how we have to interact if we're having conversations. If you have an issue, then this is how it is that we'll deal with it. If a line of disrespect is crossed, that's it, we're done. Because it's easier to cross it the second time around. So even the little, like a name calling or anything, like, I'm done. I have no patience for it. Because once you step over a line once with something, you know, I remember the first time my ex had hit me. You know, that was a huge thing, but man, it became much easier after that, after the first time that he hit me, because that barrier had been crossed. Or you hear people in their relationships and they speak to their significant other with such disrespect. So as soon as that line gets crossed, well, now if you have not pulled yourself back from the relationship, or you've not set your boundary fairly hard, it'll happen again and then again. And the boundary gets pushed a little further, a little further, a little further. And so for me, it was very much so that I didn't care if I'd be alone the rest of my life, but I'll be damned if somebody's ever going to treat me away again. And so I think that at that point in time, I became very good at telling no to people. And if I didn't want to go somewhere, I wouldn't do anything. And because I had literally had my life controlled for so many years. In fact, my phone, I was the most freeing feeling in the world. I think that probably for a couple of weeks after I had broken up with my ex, I don't even know where my phone was. Well, my phone would it would be a trigger, right? The phone would ring, and I knew there would be a problem, so it would start the autonomic nervous system reacting, and then all of a sudden my nerves would go, and I knew that there would be an issue. So for me, it was like I chucked it. I was done.
It sounds like,
yeah.
It sounds like he was an absolute, I don't know, it's perhaps an overused word, but not, you know, the word narcissist or a sociopathic narcissist or a narcissist comes to mind.
He was a sociopath.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of women and a lot of men, a lot of people out there who are in recovery with the trauma, with the resentment, and with the feeling of being bashed in and victimized and not being able to get over it. So I think a lot of people listening or watching this will be able to really take a lot of strength from then how you then set up your boundaries so that you would never let another narcissist get anywhere near close to you, because a narcissist, like you say, they'll just do enough to break through your boundaries so that they can just stretch it 3 inches or half an inch. They know where it is, and they want to and as soon as they've broken through half an inch, they're in.
And then they spin. They spin everything. So it doesn't matter what the situation looks like. At the end of the day, you end up being wrong, and you've done something wrong, and you've blah, 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 and they're the victim. And you know, they're the greatest victims in the world. You know, the narcissists and the sociopaths, they play the greatest victims in the world. And so you sit back and you look at it, and then because as an abuser, abusers for the most part, they isolate you, they, you know, take you away from your friends, your family. They create more problems for you when you actually go see them. So at the end of the day, it's a lot easier not to have to go through that crap with them. So you get they get you very isolated. And because they get you very isolated, they keep you spinning. They just keep you spinning the whole time. You're keep chasing your tail. You know, meanwhile, it was funny because at the end of the day, you know, he always accused me of cheating, which was hilarious. It did not happen in the relationship, but I always thought, you don't look behind a closed door unless you stood there yourself. So really, at the end of the day, how much cheating was he doing on me when he was out in his day? Because really, that's what it was. He was doing it, so he assumed I was doing it.
It's the classic gaslighting, isn't it?
It's totally. So I found that my biggest thing was that I had to embrace the fact that I chose to stay. So for any person that's in, and yeah, leaving might look ugly, and it might be hard, and you might end up in a shelter, or you might end up somewhere. but that shelter, all of that will be better than the fear of waking up and having somebody hit you again, or somebody tell you, verbally assault you again, or, have control over your day. I mean, I remember, just the freedom of going to the store and not having anybody hounding me about why I was taking so long and what was I wearing and who was I talking to. And, it just became excessive. And so the daily freedoms, I just started embracing those. It was just so wonderful to have, but I had to acknowledge the fact that I had chosen to stay. And my second part of my journey was like, I had started with Tracy. But at the same time, I started purging my home. So we use 20% of our stuff 80% of the time. So we have a massive amount of things that we keep constantly, but we never use them. And that clutter ends up making us ill. It all has energy. Everything in our homes has energy. So I remember I decided that I was going to start doing this with my closet. And my husband went out for the afternoon. I can't remember what he was doing. Anyways, and I sat there and I pulled out everything from my closet. And what I'd had was documentation from my ex, so that if he had killed me, that they would look at him. And so I had a lot of stuff sitting in there that was still a very terrible energetic cord to my ex, with a lot of horrific energy sitting behind it. And it had been sitting in my closet and I didn't even realize it was there anymore.
Talk about skeletons in your closet.
I know, right? It was awful. I pulled it out. I was like, oh my God, I got to get rid of this. So I sat there, I got my shredder out, and I sat there and I made it a bit of a ceremony. I mean, you could do this with burning things, you can shred it, you can tear it up, and however you want to do it. But, it was in essence a ceremony. And I took all the documents that I'd had, the emails and stuff that I had saved. And I remember just, as I looked at it and I thanked it for what it has taught me. I had to, and I thank him for what he taught me. And I had to release that and let it go to the universe. So as I put it in the shredder, I'd say, thank you. And now I release you. And after I had done that, my husband had come back. It was a couple of hours, and he walked in the room and he looked at me and he said, okay, the house feels really, really like good, but really strange. And he said, and what have you been doing? Because you look 5 years younger. He did. He said, you just look 5 years, like, this is incredible. What has been happening? And I told him what I had done. And because we also have to realize is that we wear everything. We wear our stress, we wear our trauma. So we can, through this process, we can start de-aging. We can start living healthier lives. We can have better relationships. Like, through all of this, we start improving the quality of our lives when we start getting rid of things that are energetically not in alignment with us, not serving us, or are a detriment to us anymore. And so, when you walk into a hoarder's house, for example, and a hoarder is somebody who's literally shutting the world out and is so afraid that they're using all their belongings around them for comfort. It's their security. Because if I take away all the belongings, then what do I have? What do I concentrate on? I mean, belongings take a lot of time. They take you have to care for them, you have to store them, they cost money, you have to fix them, you got to clean them. Like, it's just, so our lives.
You speak from personal experience in that.
Pardon me?
You speak from personal experience in hoarding.
Oh, I had an entire room full of boxes, like literally boxes piled high of stuff from, my husband's military days, from his father's house who had passed away, from my past. We had, so much stuff just stuck in the house. And it literally starts changing the energy in your environment. And when you're so stuck with everything that you have around you, when you can't move, when you can't breathe, where's the room for new to come in? So literally you're signaling to the universe, I'm full, I'm good.
Yes.
And so you don't have any room for flow in your life. If you, like, I'd laugh because, my husband used to be really good at this. He'd leave a pile of something somewhere on the ground. 2 weeks would go by and I'd say to him, oh my, are you going to move that? Like, that is driving me nuts. He'd say, oh, I didn't even remember it was there. I didn't even see it. Because he was so used to, I know, crazy, right? Like, he would actually literally have to step over it to get somewhere, but he wouldn't even see it. And we realized that his programming was, when he's living over in a schoolhouse in Afghanistan with, 30 guys, and they're stepping over each other's bags and everything, and the only thing that he's looking for is threats, then everything else became irrelevant. Or we could be sitting there looking at a beautiful scenery where we're looking at the wall, I'd seen the water and the birds, and, they're singing and chirping, and I see whatever it might be in front of me, and he's looking for, oh, they have a blind over there, there's a sniper that could be over there, something's reflecting over there, and he's looking at something totally different. So based off of our programming, our filters, like in Canada, we have a drunk driving commercials. I don't know if you have them there, but it's where they put one glass and it kind of gets fuzzy, and then they put a second glass and it gets fuzzier, and a third glass, and it's like, you know, it's your filters. It's like the beer goggles, right? So for us, we have those filters. So I was in an abusive relationship. I got robbed. I got raped. I was in a car accident. And now everything that we look at is through filters.
Those sound like a lot of victim filters.
Very, very much so. You know, we pretty much have a victim society. And that's one of our biggest problems, because when it's like that, then we're not really looking at how we can help other people. I mean, the entire goal is so that we can learn to return to love, as Marianne Williamson says, you know, that love is our natural inheritance. And the idea is that we can return to love and to a point where we help other people. So we're each here to learn lessons. So when we learn those lessons, we can then in turn go and help somebody else. So you have the person that suffered from abuse. Now I can help other people that have been abused. You have, my daughter died.
Say, take this example of how you turned your life around by, rather than being in that inward poor me phase of narcissism, and turned it out into how can I help the world? What's to stop you burning out, having burnout by just giving from a place of emptiness? How did you turn that round so that you were able to give from a place of fullness? Because I think a lot of people do try and give and then end up burning out. So I'm just, for those that are watching this, how did you evolve so that you, yes, it's exhilarating turning your life around, helping others, and it does fill you up to some extent, but there's also a lot of people out there trying to live that way, but also burning out living that way as well.
Okay, well, my first step was that I had to be in gratitude for exactly what it is I had at exactly that moment in my life.
That's key. So yes. Really accepting life for what it is right now, even the curses, seeing what the blessing was in everything that was difficult.
Exactly. And when you sat back, because really, I mean, let's face it, we've got some serious first world problems here. Like really, in Canada, the States, and where you are, we really have first world problems. I'm not, without a house. I'm not in a war-torn country where, I'm at risk of somebody coming in my house and killing me because, that's what the warlord's doing right now. I mean, really. So when we sit back and we look at it, and then we have to learn to be very grateful for where it is that we are. And I used to have a reference point, actually. I had met a gentleman one day, and he had quite a massive scar on his head. And I remember saying to him, "Do you mind telling me what happened to you?" And he says, "Well, I am from Rwanda. And I watched my family be macheted to death. And I took a machete to the head. And he had survived, and he made it to Canada." And so really, anything I was going through was nowhere near to me what this gentleman had gone through. And so when I sit back and I look at it, really, what are we complaining about? So we have to start being in gratitude for, and if you can't think of anything, you just have to start changing the way that you speak. So I literally, at the beginning, for the first year, it was my job to change the way it is that I thought and I spoke. It was to control my thought process. Like the ultimate is to be able to control what it is that your brain's doing. And so I remember there would be times where you get into that monkey mind, you get into that one thought, and then 30 thoughts down the road, you're like, oh crap, now I'm dying and I'm crying, and what has happened? And I remember thinking, right away I had to stop that thought process. So it's like that first 10 seconds. When that thought first comes to you, you have to catch it. And then you have to change your focus. And so it would be something as simple as, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'd sit there and say thank you. It wouldn't matter if I said thank you for a minute until I could come up with something that I was thankful for. So it could be something like, thank you, I woke up today. Thank you, I had a coffee this morning. Thank you for the sun shining. Thank you for the roof over my head. Thank you for my health. Thank you for, and you just have to start becoming grateful. When you start concentrating on what it is that you have in your life versus what it is that you don't have, funny enough, the universe gives you more. But if you're always concentrating on your lack or what you don't have or what's not happening for you, then that's what you call into your life. So my biggest lesson right off the bat was to truly become grateful for what I have. And then when I looked around, I thought, well, I have so much. Really, I have so much. I have 80% of a house that I don't use, and somebody else out there might need something and they can't afford to go buy it from a store. So I'm going to start gifting. I'm going to start purging. I'm going to start donating, and I started trying to give away as much as I possibly could at the same time while remaining grateful for what it is that I had. And I think that that is probably one of our biggest problems, is that people are not grateful, because we're in a society where we're always wanting more. Back in the day, keeping up with the Joneses, I don't know if you guys have that saying over there, but keeping up with the Joneses is like keeping up with your neighbor. Your neighbor bought a new car and you're like, oh, I'm really jealous about that, so I'm going to work to get a new car, or I'm going to work to get a bigger house. And your reference point was really your immediate surroundings and what was around you. And now our reference point for that is the world, because of the internet. So it's no longer, I'm comparing myself to the guy next door, or I'm comparing myself to, I can't even say their names because I can't, Kim Kardashian or somebody like that, it's like the most ridiculous situation, but we're comparing ourselves to what stars have and what this person has and what that person has, and we're not grateful for what we have. And so really it's starting into a point of gratitude. And that's really where it has to start. You have to start becoming grateful, and for the good and the bad. I'm grateful for my ex. I'm grateful for that relationship. I'm grateful because it taught me the lessons that I've learned today. Well, I acknowledged the lessons. I had to acknowledge them first.
Yes.
It taught me.
So as you integrated these changes into your life, what was the next sort of progression in terms of moving more towards your mastery and pulling your life together? What were the sort of key transition points?
Well, one of the biggest things was that I changed my focus to everything I was doing in my life. So everything, I'd wake up in the morning and instead of watching news or something like that, I'd read the Good News Network. And then I would, do my connection to God. And I would do that kind of routine. And then I would go and see where it is that I could gift or give to somebody else in my day. And then I studied feng shui, I studied different modalities, I studied body regeneration. And so I started really investing in what it is that was going to make my life better. Really investing. So, and when I mean investing, I mean to the point where at all costs. So for example, one day we wanted to go to an event, and it was with Tracy Clark. And we wanted to go to an event, and we had $15. So that's all we needed for gas, because this is the kind of financial situation we were in. And then all of a sudden one day the gym went in and, took out a payment that they shouldn't have been taking out, and it took away the $15. So we didn't have any money to get to the event. And we're thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? How are we going to get there? So instead of going into that, well, see, look, everything happens to me. Look at what the gym did. That means that I can't go, blah, blah, blah. We said, okay, well, thank you to the power of God, divine universe, for bringing in a creative miracle of funds, enough money in order to get us to that event. So my husband went and put his hands in his pockets later that day. And, I had cleaned out the pockets before I washed them. He put them on in the morning. There was nothing in the pockets. And he reached into his pockets and he pulled out $15. And it was exactly what we needed to get to where we wanted to go. And so it's really changing your communication, being very aware and changing your communication. And we would do things like, if I had $10 that week, did I buy meat or did I eat rice? And literally, I would eat the rice in order to be able to afford to go to something that I knew was going to uplift me, to change my life, to put me in the direction that I wanted to go. And so we sacrificed. Like, I stopped buying coffees out. I'd make coffee at home. I wouldn't eat meat that week. I'd eat rice. Like, we started doing a lot of different things and investing in ourselves, investing in myself and putting that money. And despite what anybody said, to my friends and family, I was a crackpot. You're doing what? You're experiencing what? You're going where and you're doing what? And they all thought that I was on crack. I'm like, look, I go to bed with me every morning, every night, and I wake up with me every morning. The only person that I need to make happy is me. And so if you don't agree with what I'm doing, or you don't like the way that I'm doing it, then that's quite all right. Then you carry on. But this is where I need to go. And I think the thing is that we have to get to a point where at all costs, you do what it is that you need to do to get to where you need to be. And you listen internally. You get rid of the mind chatter and get rid of all the other people that have all their opinions, because really all they're doing is they're giving you their fears. Really, that's it. When you tell somebody that you're doing something, and then all of a sudden they tell you, oh, you shouldn't do this because of this, or this might happen or that might happen. Well, that's all their fears. So thank you very much. I reject that. I don't want your fears. You can keep those. And I carried on my path. And so really it was about focusing on how it is I was progressing every single day, how I was opening even further every single day, and how I was getting rid of the narcissistic, oh, I'm not getting anything, to what can I give and what can I get rid of, whether that's emotionally, mentally, physically, it didn't really matter. But how can I get rid of that in my life so that I can open the space for the new to come in, to be in alignment with my highest and best good, my highest and best interests. And so that was really where I started focusing. But really, most people think that it's going to come overnight where they can just stop thought patterns. It's a job. It is work. And this process, this entire process is not without its pitfalls. It's not without its bad days. It's not without its challenges. It's just the fact that you have to learn to be at peace amidst the storm. I don't remember who's that quote's from, but it is really literally, the chaos is going on around you and you're still centered, knowing that you're taken care of and everything is okay. And I used to, there was a huge mantra that I used to say all the time, and it's from Trace, trust, know, and believe. Trust, know, and believe that I'm taken care of. Trust that it's coming, know that I'm taken care of, believe in that external energy that's all surround us and that we're all connected. If I can trust, know, and believe that it'll all be taken care of, and that became a mantra of mine. In fact, I have it like over here. And I didn't even change this. I made this sign. It was like an old window frame, and I cut out like pieces of paper to put the words "trust, know, and believe" on it. It's taped up there. And at this point in time, I'm financially free, and I have money coming in from all sorts of different sources. And thank you God for even better. But I left it there with its tape and everything because I looked at that every single day, and every single day I would say that to myself. I just focused on it, and it changed everything about my world. And then I moved. That was the other thing too, is that part of me knew that I was going to move. So part of the purge was the fact that I had to get rid of everything because I didn't want to take it with me to the new place, and I wanted a new fresh start. And that was another thing that really created some resistance in my life from external sources because, my parents are financial planners. So what do you mean you're going to sell a house and you're going to go rent? This person's like, well, why are you moving into that location? That's not very good. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And at the end of the day, I had to say, this is what it is that I need to do for me. And when I sold my house, I got rid of all my debt. Every ounce of debt. I had financial freedom. And now we've been able to invest that money into different sources. And I don't really care to take care of a house at this time. If this roof goes, it's not my problem. Somebody else can take care of it. Really, at this point, that's not where my focus wants to be. It's the same thing as you make different choices. Like we have a car, it's an older car, but it's fully paid for. If I went and got a new car, then I couldn't gift what I give to other people in my month. So I stick with the car that I have and I give to other people to help improve their lives. So you just have to start getting yourself into a place where you really are doing for you and investing in you at all costs. Because that's really when this change happens. When you can't take it anymore. Everybody has their points. So you can't make anybody get on this path. And the more you push them, the more you're going to push them away. The more they'll reject what it is that you're doing. So really you have to the other part of this is being an allowance for anybody else to be on their path and doing whatever it is that they want to do in whatever viewpoint that they have. Bless them and on their way they go. It's not for me to change their minds, but you definitely have to start having a strong conviction about where it is that you need to go and what you need to do and the fact that you're going to do that at all costs. And when you decide that, when you make that kind of commitment and that kind of jump, that's when your life starts turning around. Because it's just like a job. If I take a lateral move in a job, it's not scary. It's comfortable. It's okay. I just move from here to here. But now if I take a higher position, or if I move companies and I take something that's more challenging, then you have fear. So to me, the fear is fantastic because if you don't have fear, the move's not big enough. So there has to be some fear there. But then when you walk through that fear, the life that you want is just on the other side. So we have to get through our fears because our fears are what hold us back. And that's fears of, acknowledging, that could even be your fear of acknowledging that you were to blame for being in a situation. Because most people don't want to acknowledge that. Or, they want things in their life to change, but they don't want to actually make a change themselves. So they get stuck.
Personal responsibility.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't tell you the number of people that, my friends don't talk to me anymore about the stuff that they don't like, because if they're not prepared to change it, then I tell them I don't. Yeah, okay, well, you obviously like it. There's obviously a reason why you're still sitting there, or you're still in that job, or you're still in that relationship, or whatever. There's something that it's serving for you. Now you're not ready to leave. When you decide that it's not in your best interest anymore, then you'll move. But at this point in time, don't complain about it, because your indecision is a decision in and of itself to stay exactly where you are. So, you know, these people, oh, I don't know if I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave. Well, no, you're making a decision by staying. Hello, kitty.
She's sit on the keyboard.
Hilarious. So I think that one of my biggest things was that I really started investing in me, and I really started taking ownership over what my thought process was, where I was putting my energy, what I was reading, what I was watching, what I was allowing to come into my life, the friends that I had to take stock of my whole life.
So it's really interesting. You've deployed a lot of what I would call new age principles, but you're like a walking, living, breathing proof that you have used them in a way that feels really congruent, right, and really grounded and really generous, and not in this kind of narcissistic way that you see a lot of things like The Secret and used about me. It feeds, you know, it's the inverse proportion of the depression. It's like a greed. Yes. And it feels very ungrounded, and it feels very pie in the sky. And I just wonder how you manage to integrate these kind of abundance principles, these forgiveness, these life turnaround principles in such a way where you weren't suckered in, or have you found you've been using them wrongly, or you were using the shadow aspect of them in any stage? Because what you're talking about is very it's very popular in terms of it's out there, but you've mastered it in such a way where it sounds so much more integrated. It sounds so much more authentic than a lot of the shiny new age books that you read it in and you think, yeah, right, you read it, you're like, oh, whippy, and then you give up, and then it just doesn't quite work. And
well, because I think most people, I think where they get stuck is that they are using positive thinking. So I recently heard an interview with a woman that said positive thinking and gratitude are two different things. Positive thinking is the fake it till you make it thing, where, yay, my life's great, everything's great, blah, blah, blah. And that'll work for a little period of time, for a very brief period of time. But when you're in gratitude, that's where your life changes. Because when you're in gratitude for exactly where you are right now, with exactly what it is that you have and everything that's happened to you in your life, then you're not needing anything else. So I may want a house, I may want this, I may want that, and that'll come. In divine timing, it'll come. But I don't need it now, and I'm grateful for where I am. And I think the very big difference is that most people are not in gratitude. They're truly not. They can talk the talk, oh yeah, I'm so grateful, but really at the end of the day, they're not. And so really you have to, and it has to be something that's felt. One of the big things that The Secret totally misses is that actual physical feeling, that feeling of being grateful, that feeling of, they tell you to go and drive the car so this would be the equivalent of The Secret. So you want a new car, so go test drive the car, because now you understand the feeling of test driving the car. So therefore you can put yourself in that feeling spot, and then you can call that into your life. That's about the closest The Secret got to really tapping into how to connect with the universe. But really, it's being in a position where you know that you're exactly where you're supposed to be at this moment, that everything that's happened to you in your life has happened for you, not to you, and to be grateful for exactly what it is that you have right now. And when you remain in that gratitude place, when you're truly grateful for what you have, then everything is a bonus.
Yes, because then it's like the compost for then the growth of the new phase. And exactly. So everything that dies off and decays, first of all, you take responsibility, as you're talking about. Therefore, it allows what's leaving you to leave you with grace, with gratitude, and therefore it becomes your compost. It doesn't become something that you're trying to flee from, no. And then it kind of chases you. Whereas this way, it kind of drops off you and becomes your fertilizer.
Well, it's because we also try to separate ourselves from the stuff. So, we try to separate it instead of thanking it and acknowledging that it's a part of you, and then allowing it to release and let go. We see it as something outside of ourselves, and we fight it. Even such things as you see a lot of people that they may have had cancer or their illnesses, or for example, I had arthritis in my right toe, my right big toe joint. And I used to get so angry. It was because my ex had run over my foot with a car. And, that's how it came. And I remember I used to get so angry at it. Like I was always so angry at this arthritis, but think about it. Arthritis is anger. So Yeah. So I had to start loving it. So I had to start showing love to it and thanking it for what it is it showed me to allow it to release. So instead of fighting against it all the time, like think about it. We didn't have a massive blow up in the world with drugs until we had a fight, a war on drugs, until we fought cancer, until we fight all these things. When we put a fight energy behind it, then we
it massively.
Right? And so now we're not, now we're fighting against something, and so it's calling it back into our world. It's getting even bigger, and we're feeding so much attention to it. And that's our other problem, is that we concentrate so much on what we don't have that, energy flows where attention goes. The universe doesn't hear, I want more money. It's like, I don't have money, I don't have money, I don't have money. And so you don't get more money. I don't have this, I don't have this, or, because we always say this with injuries and illnesses, my cancer, my diabetes, it's our best friend. And really that's what it becomes. It becomes your friend, right? And so part of you has to realize that you have to thank it for what it served you, thank it for what it taught you, and that you can release it now. You can let go of that friendship now. But we make friends with our illness.
Friendship.
They do. We make friends. They're like our best friend, here's me and my arthritis coming, we make friends with it. And people really call it in as though it's mine. And we start owning it, which means that we've really taken it into our programming. Really, at the end of the day.
And by being appreciative of it, we literally surrender it. We let go and we allow it to release.
Well, and if we don't, it becomes our identity. Really, it becomes somebody's identity. It starts to run their lives. I was the victim of abuse. That for a while became my identity. But it did serve me for a purpose only in a short period of time, because I realized that almost 75%, 80% of the women it is that I'd ever rehabbed or trained had been abused, and nobody ever talks about it. So that's kind of the other part that we have to get to, is to be able to be secure in ourselves enough to be vulnerable and to actually talk about our stories, because really your story of how you got there is what is going to help other people. And if we don't ever talk about it because we have all this shame and all this behind us, then we never can really help anybody else. So, sometimes it takes that one person to stand up and say, I had this, and this is how I worked through it. Because I'll tell you, I don't know how many, so many of them, I could see them, they'd be struggling or they'd have self-doubt or whatever. And finally I'd say to them, who told you that you couldn't do this? And when did you start buying that? Who told you that you weren't good enough? Who told you this, that, or the other? And they'd sit there and they'd think, oh, it was my dad, or it was my uncle, or it was my mother, or it was my whatever. And the amount of abuse that I saw in people was incredible. And the amount of programming, because of it, they had literally taken it on like it was the truth. It was the reality about themselves, that then they fed into that. And so then they put up these blocks that they couldn't do this. I can't do that. I can't do this. I'm not good enough for this. I'm not good enough for that. All because somebody else told them to 20 years ago.
It's amazing what one small, or seemingly small, but big at the time, statement to a young mind can do. The trauma of that, how absorbent we are. And if you think, a lot of that is actually set in place by the age of 3 as well, even more so, the ancestral aspect of mirroring and mimicking our environment, those in our environment.
Well, I know I said this to my husband the other day. I'm like, whoever came up with that stupid saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me, had it all wrong. All wrong. Because the abuse that I took, I have a couple of scars from where, I had injury, gotten hit and stuff, and I had injuries, but the pain of those injuries is gone. The words, the consistent being told you you're not good enough, and you're this, and you're that, and you're the other, and you're blah, 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 that just gets so programmed, and that's what we replay in our heads. So admittingly, I would have taken getting hit over having somebody talk to me like a bag of crap every day, because that pain goes away. But the pain of having somebody, tell you that you're not good enough constantly, or tell you that you'll never succeed, or, whatever it is that they're gonna spew at you all the time, that really gets stuck into our system if you take that in. So one huge thing that you can start doing is literally, I reject that. Hand to the side and motion that you will not take it into your system. I reject that. Yeah, I reject it. And you don't have to be blatant, somebody, if you could, so I reject that, to the face, right?
I reject that.
Exactly. But
I'm going to walk down the street next tomorrow, and I go, I reject that. And
everybody, you're raising your hands, and it can be very subtle, just down that side. Yeah, and I just reject that. That's another Tracy tip, right? So I can reject that. And, and I also imagine myself, I use a lot of visualization. So I'm Wonder Woman. I mean, like under this getup, I have Wonder Woman garb on, and, and I imagine myself with those gold bracelets that she has. And so particularly when you're around very negative, people in an environment and all this is coming at you, particularly as you start getting older, like, oh, when you get to 40, you're going to have to wear glasses. And when you get here, you're going to adapt this and you're going to have this. And all I imagine in my head is every time it's coming at me is me going like, ping, 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 ping. Like I'm just deflecting it all. Like I reject it all. I take none of it in. I reject it all.
Because it's like a thought virus. It strikes me that a lot of those belief systems about getting old, aging, belief systems that people adopt as they reach a certain age group, they're thought viruses.
Well, and we've set the expectation in society. So mainstream, it's the collective thought process that when I get to this age, I'm going to have this kind of illness. When I get to this age, I'm going to require glasses, or my eyes are going to go. When I get to this age, the one thing that always amazed me is that as we get older, for some reason, like we don't move anymore. So whoever told you to stop moving? Whoever told you to stop climbing, trees and stop, going up and down? I can't stand the whole, oh, we went to a bungalow, it's just too many stairs. Well, those stairs are saving you. Get walking, get moving. Your body is meant to move. It's an unbelievable machine. And we've gotten to the point where we're so sedentary in our lives. We sit on our phones, we sit on the computer, we sit here, we sit there, we don't move anymore. We're not moving. And so, part of our problem is that we're buying into this whole idea. And, it's great for mainstream. It's great for the pharmaceutical companies. It's great for the medical companies because, hey, man, if I can just keep you in fear and I can keep you stuck and I can keep you afraid and I can keep you sedentary, then, hey, you're going to be my client for life. And I'm going to make a lot of money off you. So I never understood, the whole getting down on the ground. I used to have to teach people how to get up off the ground because they stopped getting down on the ground. Who does that? Why? Why would you ever stop getting down on the ground? And so we start thinking, well, now that I'm older, I can't do this. Like, go jump a rope, go run a hill, go climb over something, go challenge yourself, go feel your body again, get in touch with your body again. But we've gotten so disconnected, and everything, particularly with electronics and TV, everything's external to us now.
I mean, part of the reason why we're doing this interview is because very much awakening into mastery. It's very much about people who've embodied their mastery. And you're talking about this. I hear so many people who are, working as a healer, working with their awakening, but they're not embodying.
No.
And you see that a lot in sick people. There's this disconnect between, visceral embodiment, pushing and challenging the physical body so that you feel those edges of aliveness of, if you're not constantly gently pushing the edges, you will contract. This is what I see until you become sedentary and then concretize, and then everything just sediments and eases up.
Your fashion, your body starts just becoming like this cemented structure. Where all of a sudden you can't move anymore. You don't have to tell a dog or a cat or a baby to stretch when they feel like they need to stretch. It's an automatic thing that they do. A dog gets irritated if it doesn't get out for a walk and it doesn't get to ground itself. It needs to run, it needs to play, it needs to move. And, we've sort of, as soon as we hit school, per se, that grade 1, now all of a sudden we're not moving anymore and sit down in the chair and sit in your box and then go home and do several more hours of homework. And then, so we're just sitting all the time. Our bodies are meant to move, and that's how we keep them strong. That's how we keep them limber, and that's how we stay young. But we've really disconnected from our bodies, and that's one of our biggest things because our bodies tell us what's wrong. You getting, for example, somebody who has diabetes, they're lacking a sweetness in their life, and they have lack control. So by the time you get to that point, there's your body is screaming at you to change something, and we've stopped because we're so disconnected from our bodies. We've stopped paying attention to them and what they're telling us. And we just say, oh, okay, well, I have this problem now. Oh, I have that problem now. Now I'm going to have to just work through that. Okay, I'll go get medication from that. I'm on no medication. I used to have pills and medication constantly. I haven't been sick in over 4 years, and I take no medication. You'll find no medication in my house. It's a good thing there's a pharmacy on the corner in case anybody ever comes over because I've got nothing for you. But really, because I reject it all. And when something pops up in my system, I reject it all. you know, and when something pops up in my system, then I want to recognize it. All right, here it is. What is this? And allow it to go. Not saying that there's not a couple of days sometimes where it's a process to come out of the body, but you have to thank it and you have to let it go and then go concentrate on something else. The problem is we become very focused on what our issues are, very focused on the illness, very focused on the financial problem, very focused on what we don't have, and we spend our time concentrating on that, which just in turn calls more of it in. So you got to get rid of that and you got to start focusing on something else, and the other things will start to dissipate and to go away. Some of it instantaneously, others it might take some time, but it's important that we start moving and honoring, this is our vehicle, this is the vehicle we have. And for anybody that doesn't like their vehicle, well, you chose it. My apologies to you, but you did. You chose the way that you look, you chose your body, you chose it all. So embrace that and start loving it, and then start moving through it. Yeah, if you haven't moved in ages, it's going to be challenging and your body's going to get sore. And well, that's delayed onset of muscle soreness, and that's what your body has to do in order to break down to build up again. And that's just is what it is. And it'll get easier as it goes along, but nothing worthwhile is always easy, is it? You know, you don't learn about yourself in the good times. You learn about yourself in the bad times. You learn your lessons through the bad times. You learn your lessons through the challenges. And so it's embracing those.
So brilliant. So that probably brings us towards the end of our time together.
Oh, that sucks.
Any last thoughts you wanted to get in? Any last sort of part of the, you know, any last words, last points to make before we wrap up?
I think that the number one thing is that you have to take ownership over where you are. It starts there. It has to start there, because there's no way it's going to move if you don't own it. If it's always external, it won't change. And then it's your job to start paying attention to what it is that you do in your day, what it is that you're thinking, where your focus is, where you're putting your energy and your time. And then probably the hardest thing for people, because we're in a society of people that always want to belong all the time. They want to be seen and heard. It's the same as the group, and they don't want to stand out from the crowd. And to me, I don't want to follow the crowd. I have no desire to be a sheeple. I have no desire to be the sheep in the herd of the people. And so for me, it's really standing in your power of saying no, of really embracing what your body's telling you, that expansion, that contraction. Does this invite to this event make me feel good? And if it does, then I'll go. And if it doesn't, then I won't. And if somebody asks me why, because I don't feel like it. Like, I feel no need to explain myself to anybody. So we have to let go of needing other people to validate us all the time. Because the hugest thing is that you're absolutely perfect exactly the way that you are right now. And that's what we have to start embracing. And if somebody doesn't see that about you, and if somebody doesn't, thinks that you need to change or be a different way, well, then maybe you need to let that relationship go. And at the end of the day, you wake up with yourself in the morning and you go to bed with yourself at night. So everybody can have their opinions on what it is that they think you should do, but at the end of the day, you need to do what's good for you, because they're doing what's good for them. So really, it's about starting to love yourself, really taking stock of what it is that you've allowed to be in your life, and where do I go from there, and how do I make this change? But nobody can do it for you but you. And you have to, at the end of the day, be the one that takes responsibility to take those steps in your life. So that's my biggest advice to people. Own your shit.
Absolutely sublime. There's such a, for me personally, and I hope for those that are watching this, absolute potent energy, potent messages, and beautiful wisdom that's come out of your mouth today. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. It's been a pleasure. Much love to you.
Awesome love to you too, sweetie.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.